It's interesting how no one ever tells you this, but the biggest changes in life don't begin with explosions, they begin with silence. The truth that almost no one admits is that the invisible ending arrives long before you notice it, and when it does, it turns everything inside you upside down. Maybe you're living that right now, that strange feeling that life looks the same on the outside, but you don't. It's as if something is saying goodbye without asking, while another part of you is trying to be born quietly in the background. And here's the surprising part, you might think you're confused, tired, or even being too dramatic, when in reality you're going through one of the rarest and most powerful experiences a person can have, your soul giving you clear signs that your transformation has already begun. It's not burnout, it's not an identity crisis, and it's not a lack of gratitude, it's a calling. A calling the world usually ignores, but that deeply transforms anyone who is brave enough to listen. Here's something else people rarely talk about. When the soul decides to initiate this shift, nothing tastes the same anymore. Your desires change, your body reacts differently, and your heart starts asking questions you didn't want to answer. And this is where the hidden reward appears, because if you know how to read the first signs, you can speed up the whole process and reach the phase of clarity much sooner than you think. The real question is, are you ready to see what this quiet ending actually means? He starts to notice that even though everything looks organized on the outside, there's a quiet discomfort nudging him from within, as if the invisible end were drawing closer without making any noise. It's not sadness, but a feeling that life has become too small for the path his soul truly wants to follow. And this subtle discomfort shows that the spiritual transformation has already begun, even when nothing has changed out there. Right in this seemingly stable space, he recognizes the first signs from the soul, those small alerts that announce a spiritual cycle coming to an end. The job is still the same, the relationships are still intact, but the soul is whispering that something no longer fits where it once did. And without even realizing it, this inner movement opens the door to a new level of awareness, like hearing a calling that can no longer be ignored. With a bit of humor, he even thinks, everything in my life looks the same, so why do I feel different? And that's exactly when the soul in transition reveals itself, asking for space for a spiritual rebirth that doesn't have a shape yet, but is already alive. He can't explain it, but he feels it. He feels that his inner evolution is pushing everything toward a deeper awakening, preparing the ground for the next step, even if he can't see what it is yet. He begins to sense a soft restlessness, almost like the inner wind shifting direction without making a sound. They are those subtle signs from the universe that show up out of nowhere, calling him toward a path he can't see yet but can already feel vibrating in his soul and consciousness. It's the kind of sensation that announces a profound awakening long before any actual step is taken. Suddenly, ideas he once ignored begin to make sense, showing him that the soul's journey moves in silence before it moves in the world. And this quiet pull doesn't shout, doesn't force, it simply invites, gently guiding him toward an inner new beginning that only those who go through it can recognize. Inside him, the soul's transformation starts arranging new directions as if preparing the house before an important guest arrives. He tries to follow his usual routine, but it feels like wearing clothes that no longer fit. The soul asks for a new rhythm, a new landscape, a new version of himself. And in this subtle internal pull, the inner awakening becomes stronger, suggesting a spiritual rebirth that is still simmering beneath the surface. It may seem simple, but this gentle calling is setting the stage for something greater, something the next steps will soon reveal. He realizes that things that once made his eyes light up now feel too small for the journey his soul is stepping into. It's as if old identities were quietly loosening, one piece at a time, creating space for deep spiritual healing. And this silent letting go shows that the soul in transformation is reorganizing everything within, preparing for something much bigger. It's interesting how it doesn't hurt the way it used to. In a way, it almost feels like relief. He can sense that activities, habits, and even connections that once defined him no longer match the person he's becoming. It doesn't feel like loss, but expansion, as if life were opening the path for a spiritual rebirth that can only begin after an inner cycle finally comes to an end. With a touch of humor, he thinks, "Did I change, or did I just grow?" And the truth is, that's exactly what happened. The awakening of consciousness makes him see that what once helped him now holds him back. And in this natural detachment, spiritual transformation starts to take shape, preparing the space for new signs, new encounters, and new confirmations that are already on their way. He begins to notice coincidences that seem too small to be planned, yet too meaningful to ignore. They show up as encounters, sentences, numbers, and situations that feel like subtle signs from the universe, confirming that his spiritual shift is already unfolding. It's as if the outer world were responding to his inner awakening, showing him that none of this is random. As his soul's journey moves forward, these signs appear with almost poetic precision, someone saying exactly what he needed to hear, an unexpected path opening up, a message showing up at the perfect moment. And behind it all, a quiet certainty, his soul and his consciousness are perfectly aligned. He realizes the universe has its own way of signaling when a spiritual rebirth is near. He even laughs to himself when something happens 3 times in a row. "All right, universe, I got it." Because these patterns aren't just coincidences, they're confirmations that a spiritual cycle is reaching its right closure. Every synchronicity feels like a gentle nudge, guiding him toward the next level of his evolution, where new insights start to appear. He starts to feel a strange discomfort, the kind that shows up even before any real change happens. It's as if his shifting soul were quietly rearranging everything inside, preparing the ground for a spiritual rebirth that hasn't fully surfaced yet. This soft discomfort reveals that the invisible ending has already begun its work, announcing a deep awakening he can no longer ignore. Even though his everyday life looks the same, something no longer fits, like a shoe that once felt perfect and now feels tight. This sensation exposes the signs of the soul, warning that the end of a spiritual cycle is approaching, even when nothing has changed on the outside. The evolution of the self always begins this way, discreet, subtle, almost shy, yet impossible to deny. He notices himself avoiding certain conversations, stepping away from old habits, and questioning choices that once felt automatic. This silent shift shows that the soul's transformation is already underway, preparing him for a wider awakening of consciousness. And without realizing it, this discomfort opens the door to the next stage, the one where the universe speaks more softly, but more clearly. He begins to see that not every change arrives like an earthquake. Sometimes, it shows up as a gentle tap on the shoulder. That tap is the universe's subtle way of guiding his soul's journey toward an inner awakening that doesn't need chaos to exist. It's proof that spiritual transformation can be quiet and still deeply life-changing. These gentle nudges appear in simple moments, an unexpected thought, a sudden desire to simplify his life, or a strange sense of peace in situations that once stressed him. All of it shows that his shifting soul is taking the lead, guiding him toward a more serene spiritual rebirth. And this calmness is often the clearest sign that a spiritual cycle has already begun to close. He even notices that he's responding differently to things, with more ease, more maturity, more clarity. This emotional shift is a clear sign of inner evolution, showing that spiritual transformation doesn't need to be loud to be real. And without noticing, this new way of feeling makes room for something even more evident, something that's about to unfold in life's next movement. He realizes that, without any effort, he's beginning to set boundaries where he once let everything slide. This change doesn't come from harshness, but from his evolution, which asks for more alignment and less exhaustion. It's his shifting soul showing that spiritual transformation isn't just about feeling, it's about acting in favor of his own balance. Suddenly, He stops trying to force conversations that drain his energy and naturally steps away from anyone who doesn't respect his peace. This isn't avoidance, it's an awakening of consciousness that quietly reorganizes everything toward an inner new beginning. These are signs from the soul, showing that protecting his own space is an essential part of spiritual rebirth. With a bit of humor, he notices that even his patience has changed. Now he only stays where his soul can breathe. This growing clarity makes it obvious that the end of his spiritual cycle is unfolding exactly as it should, gently, yet firmly. And as these boundaries become more solid, the universe starts answering with new opportunities that appear like perfect synchronicities. He begins to notice that the more his spiritual transformation progresses, the more life responds with small flashes of coincidence. These synchronicities show up like silent confirmations, revealing that his soul and consciousness are finally aligned. And every detail seems to whisper that a deep awakening is already taking place, even if he is still getting used to this new version of himself. What's fascinating is that these confirmations don't show up by chance, they appear exactly when he's ready to see them. A conversation arrives at the perfect moment, an opportunity comes effortlessly, a symbol repeats itself until it catches his attention. They are subtle signs from the universe, showing that his soul's journey is maturing into a true spiritual rebirth. He smiles as he realizes this flow isn't magic, it's alignment. When the end of a spiritual cycle happens on the inside, life begins rearranging everything on the outside, like a perfect dance between intention and path. And the more he responds to these signs, the clearer his soul's transformation becomes, preparing him to put all of this into practice with even more awareness. He understands that to keep up with this spiritual transformation, he needs to record everything he feels and notices. By writing, he uncovers hidden patterns, discovers signals from the soul, and identifies movements of awakening that would otherwise go unnoticed. Through this simple habit, the journey of the soul gains shape and clarity, almost like having a direct conversation with his deepest self. Over time, he learns to slow down so he can hear what speed usually hides. Walks, quiet pauses, and small rituals awaken insights that nourish his spiritual rebirth. And in these small pockets of calm, his shifting soul reveals subtle nuances of this ending cycle, opening the perfect space for a more conscious and mature inner beginning. He also starts to notice what he is leaving behind: habits, beliefs, people, fears, all dissolving naturally. Observing this every day helps him see that the universe's subtle signs don't arrive to scare him, but to support his evolution. And the more he pays attention to these details, the more evident his soul's transformation becomes, preparing him for the next leap. He realizes that all of these experiences, the initial discomfort, the new boundaries, the synchronicities, form a clear mosaic of the spiritual transformation already in motion. Every detail connects as if his soul's journey had a hidden script, guided by the universe's subtle signs. And when seen together, everything reveals a deep awakening happening from the inside out. He understands that true change begins in the inner silence, long before any external shift becomes visible. It's in this invisible space that the end of a spiritual cycle takes shape, preparing the ground for an inevitable spiritual rebirth. A soul in transformation always speaks to the heart first, and only then begins to reorganize the world around it. As he starts to recognize all of this, he begins to see the hidden beauty in his own processes, even in the confusion, the emptiness, and the doubts. Because all of it points to the evolution of his being, revealing the transformation of the soul in its purest form. And this awareness awakens a natural desire to understand how these signs unfold when the soul is trying to show that something greater has already begun. Now that he understands these signs so clearly, he realizes none of this is random. When the soul starts its shift, it doesn't ask for permission, it simply begins. But the real question is something else entirely: what is he going to do with this knowledge? Because recognizing an invisible ending without taking action is like receiving a map and never taking the first step. Will he keep ignoring these subtle callings, or will he finally allow this inner awakening to shape the days ahead? He knows he can't go back to the old version of himself, the one who accepted too little, tried too hard to fit in, and silenced his own intuition. Now, life asks for presence, courage, and choice. And the question that remains is direct and thought-provoking. Which of these signs have you noticed in yourself over the past few days, and what is the first step you'll take now that you understand all of this? Because transformation doesn't happen when you understand, it happens when you decide to act. If this video helped you see what was hidden in your own process, then don't let this journey end here. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep moving deeper into your path of expansion, awareness, and awakening. There is so much more waiting for you, and your soul already knows that.